Suge Knight snitched on Dr. Dre, and Roman Dolidze versus Marvin Vettori is a useless matchup. Stay tuned because I'm going to tell you how these two things relate. Now, number one of the biggest things that I emphasize in my channel is that there are no good guys and bad guys when it comes to understanding the fight game, or when it comes to understanding a story of conflict between two people, no matter if it was in the hip-hop world, or whether it was in the sports world, or whether it was in a mixed martial arts world, or whether it is in the world of geopolitics, and all these different topics that I sort of cover. Well, here's something you got to understand, right? Roman Dolidze fighting Marvin Vettori is a useless matchup to no end at all. And let me explain why. Dan Hardy, you guys know who he is, right? When he retired, he said that the reason why was because he felt that all of this was absolutely useless. If you remember anything about Dan Hardy, he challenged George St. Pierre for the 170-pound title and wasn't successful, but made a good account of himself. He got caught in an arm bar and decided, you know what, I'm not going to tap, I'm going to fight through with it. And afterwards, he sort of got into a losing streak, one after another. The next thing you know, he got a win over Amir Sadallah, which broke the losing streak. And he said, I don't know why I keep doing this. This is just nothing more than a useless, meaningless endeavor. Now, going back to Suge Knight, supposedly he went out and snitched on Dr. Dre, saying that he tried to get him killed. Now, why would he say this? Now, look, if you're from that world and you're about that life, you know that there's certain things that you don't talk about. You know that there's certain things that you don't put out in public. And I just don't understand why he did that. But at the same time, I sort of understand. And then at the same time, I don't. He got denied a parole recently. And I don't know why. I don't know what is the reason behind that. He's already 60 years old. By the time he gets out of prison, I really don't think that there's going to be the same guys, those same killers, that are going to ride for him the way that they did in the 90s, especially when he had all the money in the world to fund everybody in the hood. Now, why is he saying all of this? Well, let's be honest about this, right? Dr. Dre, no matter how much you love him, no matter how much you're thankful of the fact that he brought 50 Cent, The Game, Eminem, and all these great musical acts that many of you have grown up to love, it does not separate from the fact that he was not the best human being there is. We're talking about a guy that beat up D. Barnes, and that's not even the half of it, right? Behind the scenes, Dr. Dre admitted to Suge Knight that, hey, he's bisexual, he's gay, or this and that. What did Suge Knight do? He did exactly this. He said, you know what? We're going to do exactly what they did back in the Hollywood days, back in the 1950s, what these old white actors used to do when they were gay behind the scenes. They decided, you know what? We're going to set up a marriage so that we can make you look good. That's exactly what they did with Dre, and lo and behold, somewhere along the lines, they got into a fallout, and then here they are with this little beef and little fiasco that they have going on that's been ongoing for 30 some odd years. So here's something you got to understand, right? At some point, he started thinking to himself, none of this really matters anymore. You know what? Here I am in a phone call, in a prison phone call, doing podcasts, doing different interviews, and he decided, you know what? I'm just going to go and spill my guts to the world because none of this matters anymore. He's about to be 60 years old. He's denied a parole. You don't know when he's going to get out. Maybe he's going to serve 10 more years, 20 more years. Who knows? But he's at a point right now where he feels like none of this really matters. Now, of course, this is an MMA channel, and I have to relate the topics that I want to talk about into MMA to get into algorithm. So here's Marvin Vettori in this particular matter at hand, right? Where does he go from here, even if he was to beat Roman Dolidze? And Roman Dolidze, is he even a title challenger worthy? Well, that remains to be seen. I could give you an opinion right now. That may not matter in a couple of years if he proves me wrong. But I doubt he's going to prove me wrong. I don't think that there's going to be any title implications for any of this. I think that these are just two guys that are in a fun fight. One guy has already challenged for the title, Marvin Vettori, and that's that. That's their career. That's what they're going to do. That's the endless pit that they're going to experience in their career trajectory, similar to Dan Hardy and the reason why he decided to retire. He took ayahuasca out of nowhere, started like having these illusions, or not illusions. Let me retract that back. Not illusions, more like revelations of the reality of the world. Like, what is the purpose of doing this over and over again? I win here, I go back, and I go and try to win again, or I lose here, I go back and try to win again, and then if I lose, then I just go through this whole entire cycle over and over and over again. So you understand how this sort of relates to Suge Knight possibly snitching on Dr. Dre. Because if you know anything about Suge Knight, man, he had a fierce reputation in the 90s. I mean, he brought black gang culture into a level of mafioso that many people would have never imagined. Even Keefy D, his rival, flat out said, hey, you know what? We don't do none of that. We don't have the police involved or anything like that, because if you remember, Suge Knight was so powerful that he had the influence of a police force behind him. And to the point where it was such an embarrassment for the city of Compton that they decided to tear down the whole entire police force of Compton as a city police force and convert it into a sheriff's department, which is what currently is happening in Compton right now. But that is the reality of this situation. Sometimes you just get to a point where a lot of things become meaningless. Now, I'm not saying that Roman Dolidze and Marvin Vettori is not a fun fight, because it is. But the question is, what happens after that? And I'm not saying that this story with Suge Knight and Dr. Dre is not interesting, but the reality is what happens after that with all these circumstances surrounding both of them in two different contrasting life trajectories. Number one, Dr. Dre is a super billionaire, owns a piece of Beats, which is affiliated with Apple. So he's got billions off of that. He's living off of royalties. He's living his best life. And for whatever reason, Suge Knight is not. And he's in a completely different life experience right now. He's in prison. He's trying to get parole. He just got recently denied. So he goes on podcasts, goes on different platforms, and spills his guts to the world, literally telling the world that this man tried to get me killed. Now, that's some cold work, man. That is some cold work. But you know what? Maybe there is some point to what Dan Hardy said in the end, is that maybe there is no purpose to any of this. We're just travelers in this life that we're living right now in this realm, waiting for us to go into the next phase of our life, which is the afterlife. But that is all that I have for this one. I hope that I've given you some tips, some life lessons, and some interesting outlooks of life that you may never have seen before. Don't forget to like and subscribe.